do want to thank the organizers of this event for inviting me to spend this time with you. We're going to spend the next 55 minutes or so talking about leading from the inside out. This is a passion of mine. My purpose as a coach is to inspire and empower high-performing women leaders to grow beyond their expertise and step into their leadership. So that's kind of my jam. That's what I do every day. And I'm thrilled to be here today to share some of my insights, some of the work that I've done with my clients. And I hope that you'll gain some insight as well as it relates to what your needs are as a leader. So we're going to start with an action guide. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the comments and I am going to paste in. I put this on Slack, which is now my new favorite communication tool. But I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the comments. I use an action guide. I don't typically share my PowerPoint. I think we all know where the PowerPoint ends up. So I think sharing an action guide where you can take the notes that are relevant to you, what makes sense for you to remember this, the content that I'm going to be sharing, gives you an opportunity to do that. So take a moment, if you would. It's in my Google Drive. Go ahead and get in there and print that up and use that as we kind of walk through this presentation. So you're going to get the action guide. Move over here, you're going to print it. And then anytime you see this pencil icon on the screen, that's a clue that it's time for you to put something in your action guide. Okay, so I'll always provide you with those clues. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is, right now you're seeing a backdrop here. I have a green screen behind me, and behind the green screen is what you're seeing on the screen right now. I am kind of a book fanatic. You can see I'm even running out of space. I pile stuff on top of the bookshelves, but I have a 10 by 10 office that I'm sitting in right now. And these bookshelves, and I live in Southern California, so I'm really kind of hoping that, I've been lucky so far. Anytime we have an earthquake of any kind, I'm able to get out of here pretty quickly, but I really hope I'm not in here when the next earthquake hits. But ironically, what you're seeing here, this is pre-purge. I actually did a recent purge of my books, and I have to admit, it doesn't look a whole lot different. This post-purge, I don't think I did a real great job of pulling out books that I don't need. I really have trouble letting go. But it leads me to a story that I want to share with you. So I am the oldest of 3 daughters, and as the oldest, the high expectations of excelling in every part of my life were pretty pressure packed. My family really wanted, especially my father, was all about do really well in school. And so I worked hard because it didn't come easy for me. I really wanted to get some level of validation. My dad's acknowledgement was really important to me. So I worked really, really hard. And through that, I became very competitive and perfectionistic. And admittedly, I wasn't really easy to be around. So this actually continued into my work life. My competitive perfectionistic patterns continued. I wanted to be the best I could possibly be at everything that I did. And so I continued to, quote, work hard. That need for validation transferred from my dad to whoever my boss was at the time. I was driven by and highly dependent on their acknowledgement for my hard work. And I got it. I frequently did well on performance reviews. And, that really drove me to excel at work. I was then starting to get promoted into leadership roles, and it was a result of all of that hard work. But then what I noticed is that my advancement started to stall, and I didn't understand why that was. So my belief at the time was my work should speak for itself. That should be enough to show you that I deserve this promotion. And that was a big mistake. When I started to really examine what was happening, I actually put down the magnifying glass, which was my way of looking at everything outside of me and trying to figure out why I wasn't advancing the way I wanted to. And I put that down and picked up the mirror. And I realized, I think this has a lot more to do with me than anything outside of me. So what I've realized is that I'm not alone. And what I want to do is let's kind of look at this graph here. And really what this graph is depicting is, men and women enter the workforce at about the same rate, 50% men, 50% women. And as they start to advance, you can see, the bottom, the horizontal axis, starting as an individual contributor, then moving into middle manager roles. And you can see that right at that middle manager role, this is where women kind of fall off what appears to be a pretty steep cliff. And so I would really love to hear from you. I mean, for me, this was about me getting in my own way. It was about me thinking that my hard work should be enough. And that really got in my way. So it was really at about this point where I started to kind of, okay, this is where it's stalled. So I'm curious about you guys, put in the comments, what do you think is happening at the point of this cliff? I'd love to hear from you. Also, just some data that might be interesting is 70%. This was in a study that I recently read. It was they interviewed like 1,000 women. It's not a huge study, but I think it's relevant. 70% of professional women do not have a clear career plan. They don't. 70%. That number was, to me, staggering. Of those 70%, 40% actually say they're winging it. They're just like, let's just see what comes up. There's no thought around it. It's like, oh, an opportunity, it's kind of like a shiny object. Oh, an opportunity over there came up. Maybe I'll go for that. And there isn't anything intentional going on. So I think those numbers are really high. And this actually holds up with the women that I coach in my coaching practice. And if this resonates with you, I'd love to see, put yes in the chat if this resonates with you. If you don't have a clear career plan, I'd love to hear about it. So again, as I was looking in the mirror, this is kind of the thought that came up for me. I am my problem and I am also my solution. And for me, this is really good news. Because if I am willing to then explore my part and then see that the problem is within me and I can accept that, then I can take steps to change it. So I'd love to know if this resonates with you. Again, keep on typing in the comments. Yes, I get it. I'd love to hear from you on that. So let's talk about the stories we tell ourselves. This is an interesting phrase that I had never heard before. And a colleague of mine was in Australia working on a project, and she heard this phrase, don't be the tall poppy. And when I heard this, I'm like, what does that mean? I have never heard that before. Maybe some of you have. And it really means don't stand too tall above the rest because you'll be cut down. So maybe some of you, I know that I have definitely heard this message. Don't be too big for your britches. Don't be too much because others won't feel comfortable around you. They'll want to chop you down. And so the message we get, especially as women, is to play small. And that's hard for me. I have a pretty big personality. And so to play small takes work. And I also don't want people to feel intimidated by me, uncomfortable around me. I really want to connect with folks, but I also know how that can happen. So there's a balance that we need to achieve. But the reason I want to share this with you is that this is just one of numerous limiting beliefs that some of us have taken in. We've either learned them, we've agreed to them because we've been taught. Maybe it's cultural, maybe it's from our family belief system, but we kind of adopt these beliefs, and maybe at the time it served, but maybe it doesn't anymore. So my challenge is, really get in touch with what those beliefs might be and ask yourself, is this continuing to serve me? So then I guess I would say at the end of this, be the tall poppy. So why is this topic important to you? You guys see a pencil on the screen. What I'd love for you to do is to write down in your action guide, why is this topic important to you? And I'm going to lead the witness a little here. I've got a few reasons that maybe resonate for you. So how's this one? I relate to Camille's high performance story. That is me. Maybe. Or I'm at that cliff and I need to make a what's next decision. Is that you? Is that why this is important? I'm tired of playing small. Tall poppy. I'm not sure what I want next or how to go after it. Are you one of those 70%? And thank you, Jasmine, for resharing the action guide. I appreciate that. I'm afraid to take on a greater role. My life is already crazy busy. Is that you? Or is it something else? I'd love for you, again, please write this in your guide. And if you're willing to share, put it in the comments. Share it with your colleagues. This is about being vulnerable. It's like, yeah, that's me. I get it. So go ahead and put it in the comments. So when I started working with women leaders, it's been clear that the most common barriers are internal, as we've been talking about, like that tall poppy belief. And what I do in working with my clients is really help them get in touch with what those barriers are and figuring out ways to overcome them. Some of these things, they're hardwired. They're going to be there, but the goal is to minimize the impact, right? And I think that is where the work is. So it is about what I'm displaying here on the screen, which is a model that I've developed. This is what I use to help, with working with my clients to work them from soup to nuts, basically, around developing their self-leadership. Again, leadership is an inside job. It's leading from the inside out. We got to start with us. So today, what we're going to do is really focus on this first, because there's a lot here. We're going to focus on the first building block of self-leadership, which is self-awareness. And towards the end of today's presentation, I'm going to give you each an opportunity to kind of rate yourself in the 6 building blocks kind of quickly. And then I'm going to have some goodies that I want to share with you, some free goodies that might also help you get on the path to developing your own self-leadership. So here's a few things that I know for sure. First of all, everyone has a leadership brand, whether they know it or not. The way you are showing up today is your brand. The question becomes, is it by design? Because you know what your brand is and you are expressing that brand every day? Or is it by default? It just kind of is. So again, whether you know it or not, you have a leadership brand. By developing your personal self-leadership, you can confidently design and express your unique leadership brand. And I actually have some tools around how to do that. So yeah, we'll definitely talk some more about that. And then finally, transforming into a strong, confident leader who people want to follow is possible. So those are the 3 things that I definitely know for sure. So here's what we're going to cover today. And I'm going to look at the time. Oh, doing all right. So first of all, the key skills you must develop to create the career and life you desire. I know that's kind of big, but I think it's a good start. A couple simple exercises that will get you on the path to developing your self-leadership skills. And then finally, the bigger picture that will allow you to see how gaining clarity and confidence can multiply your impact as a leader in all areas of your life. So let's jump in. So in talking about self-awareness, what we're really talking about is emotional intelligence. Self-awareness is one of the 4 skills, the key skills that make up emotional intelligence. So what I'm going to do today is kind of give you a primer on emotional intelligence. And I'm just going to refer to it as EQ. It's a lot easier. EQ, emotional intelligence, or EQ, is one's ability to recognize and understand emotions in yourself and others, and your ability to use this awareness to manage your behavior and relationships. So you can see in the image, this is about motivation. This is about decision making. This is about interpersonal awareness. This is about empathy. What's also important is not to confuse emotions with being emotional. Okay. It's a willingness to acknowledge that our emotions exist. And I believe that when we develop our self-awareness, our ability to self-manage, our EQ in general, this is a leadership advantage. You would be hard pressed to find a list of here are the key skills, leadership skills or competencies that a leader must have in today's world. I think you would be hard pressed to find one that didn't include self-awareness. And if you find one, I'd love you to send it to me. My email is on that action guide, so send it to me. But everyone I've seen so far includes self-awareness. So that's why this, to me, is so important. Okay. So from a business perspective, why is this even important? Why do I care about this, Camille? So this is really about how do I manage my professional relationships? If a key priority of yours right now in your role is to network more effectively, this is going to be important. This is an important skill to have. If you are somebody who works on a lot of projects, this is about how do I collaborate more effectively? EQ is going to help you. If you are someone who is now in a leadership role and you need to be making more decisions on behalf of your team, EQ is going to help you do that. So this is why, in my opinion, developing one's EQ is so important. So let's move on. So I want you to bear with me because I'm a bit of a brain geek. I love learning more about how the mind works. The previous presentation on neurodivergence was so touching to me. I soaked it all in. But I want to kind of talk about how we take in information. Okay. So what you're seeing here in this image, first, information enters the brain here through the spinal cord. This is the back, the brain stem. This is the oldest part of our brain, and it's also known as the reptilian brain. This, and some of you, I'm sure, have heard this before. This is where fight, flight, freeze lives. So the first thing when information comes in, and you're not even conscious of this, is, am I safe? And if you are, then the information keeps moving. So think of this as a bit of a highway, okay? It keeps moving through your brain. Next stop is the limbic system. This is the emotional center of your brain. This is where all of your past experiences are stored. Think of it as a hard drive, okay? This is where your emotions, your recollections are stored, conscious or unconscious. This is where they are. Okay. So now what your brain is saying is, does this remind me of something that's in my memory bank? Is an emotion being triggered here? If the answer is no, then it continues on the road to the next station, rational thinking or logical reasoning. So this is where I can think it through. I can explore options. I can navigate, again, more options, brainstorming. This is where more rational thought is. The emotion isn't tied to it. It's all about rational thinking. Okay. So as I described this, what's really important to know is that this limbic system, the emotional center, is in charge. Okay. And I'll use an example. When I live in Southern California, the 405 freeway, if anybody is familiar with the 405, the San Diego freeway, at least pre-COVID, you're right on that. And there's a lot of emotions going on. It's people are cutting in front of you. And the question then becomes, can I, if I become emotionally triggered by someone's behavior on the freeway, can I regulate my emotions so that I can think rationally? The idea is I want it to move through to reason and, rational thinking. Okay. Because the emotional part of our brain is in charge, unless we understand our own personal emotional management system, if you will, if we understand our response to certain triggers, then if we can't do that, we're at risk of what's called an emotional hijacking. This is when we see people behaving badly. And making choices that they regret. So emotions are important. The idea is, how do I manage them well? And that's what the source of EQ. Now, what's also interesting is that there's this like little communication process going on between rational thinking and my emotional center. Okay. I can think, oh, dang, that guy, why did he just cut me off? And I'm like, you know what? Maybe he's in a hurry. I'm going to just I can reframe my story in my head. Maybe he's just in a hurry. Something's going on. Maybe he didn't see me. It's not personal. Oh, but man, my heart is beating like crazy. Yes, it is. So it's this communication that's going back and forth. And so when we are aware of our emotions, it opens up this line of communication. So let's talk about the EQ model we're going to quickly kind of go through today. There's 4 skills. There's, first of all, personal competence, which is our own self-awareness and our own self-management. And then there's social competence, social awareness. Can I be aware of others' emotions and needs? And then relationship management. How do I take all of this together and manage my relationships effectively? So we're going to spend the majority of time on our personal competence. And I think the reason I want to do that is because, to me, this is about you. That's what this conference is about you. And the others will kind of fall into play, and you'll hear as we kind of go through each of them. But those first 2 are really the starting point. So let's start with self-awareness. Skill 1, the ability to accurately perceive your own emotions and motives and how they affect your thoughts and behaviors. Self-awareness is the foundation of emotional intelligence. It's when we are self-aware that we can self-manage better, that we can notice the emotions in others, and that we can manage our relationships. So this has to be the starting point. Okay. Love this. Emotions are data, not directions. And this is from a book, Susan David, she has an amazing TED Talk. If y'all like TED Talks, check it out. She talks about toxic positivity. She talks about the importance of acknowledging our emotions, and also that agility, that being able to flex to our emotions, to acknowledge them, to honor them, and then move through them. It's an amazing TED Talk. I would highly recommend it. But this is one of my favorite quotes. Emotions are data, not directions. And here's one of those exercises that I mentioned. I said I was going to share a couple with you, but the first one is around noticing our emotions. So what I would love for you to consider, and if you look on page 4 of your action guide, you're going to see some open note space. So go ahead and jot this down if you're interested in trying this exercise. Number 1, first thing you want to do is, at the end of the day, create some reflection time. You want to have some time at the end of your day where you can kind of reflect on your day. And during that time, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to identify 3 emotions that you experienced that day. And what I'm going to do is challenge you to go beyond, well, I was happy or I was sad or, simple. I want you to dig a little deeper. So instead of saying I was happy, maybe did you actually experience joy? If you did, I want you to note that. Or if you were sad, did you really experience disappointment? So really getting to the bottom of what were the emotions that you actually experienced. Okay. Then the second thing I want you to do is I want you to think about, okay, so I had that emotion. What triggered that emotion? What happened right before you experienced that emotion? Okay. So maybe disappointment. Well, I was on a phone call with one of my team members and, when we were discussing some of her, her due dates on a project, she said she hadn't gone to any of them. So maybe it was just, I'm irritated and I'm just so disappointed because this is somebody who always follows through. Why did I feel that disappointment? And so really what was happening to trigger that emotion? Okay. And then the third thing is, so now that I'm clear on the emotion and what caused it, can I go even deeper and ask, what was the need or value that was also triggered? Well, I have a need to know that I can trust my employees to meet their due dates or, anything like that. So what is that? There's a need that you have or a value that you have. I value integrity. I feel like that value was triggered. So it's just something to try, just to see if it helps give you a little bit more language around your emotions. Okay. So that's exercise number 1. Do you know who you are? And this kind of is part of that last exercise around needs and values. We all have values. We just may not have labeled them, and we all have strengths and we all have needs. And I think what helps us to get to know us better and to develop our self-awareness is to get to the bottom of those things. What is important to me? And when we pay attention to our emotions, and especially when we're highly triggered by something, there's a value that's underpinning that trigger. Something is going on. And so really understanding what our values are, what our strengths are, what our triggers are, is helping you to really understand why you experience what you do. Okay. There are 2 parts to self-awareness. The first one is internal, right? This is about, do I see myself clearly? The second is external. How do others see me? And we often have, I know for me, I've had blind spots. I didn't necessarily understand or know how others perceived me or experienced me. And so here's a second exercise for you to try if you're willing. Now, this might take a little bit of courage, but I think y'all can do it. Okay. What I'd love for you to do is to find, 5 people, even up to 10, if you're willing to do it. 10 people who you would consider loving critics, people who love you and want you to be successful, but they're also willing to tell you the truth. Okay. And ask them, send a text to individuals. Don't do a group text. That's really important. No group text here. 1 text per person. And ask them the question, what 3 adjectives would you use to describe me? Because this is an opportunity for you to get feedback from folks and to understand there's that external awareness. Okay. How do they perceive you? So when I first learned about this exercise, I did this, and I'm going to share the results of that exercise. So here's all of the words that I got. Okay. And the ones that you see with an asterisk next to them were repeats from different people. So I sent this out to 10 people. And from different, and some of them were previous colleagues, were current colleagues, friends, family, people who I trusted would tell me the truth. And so these words are lovely. I just saw this and it just made my heart sing. I thought, oh, these are just lovely. I mean, to be told that I'm joyful, that I am enthusiastic, that I'm empathetic, caring, warm. I mean, these are all words that I just love. And then I saw one word that kind of made me like, what? I don't get it. Habitual. I thought, what does that mean? And so I sat with it, and that's what I'm going to encourage you to do. Sit with any words that you get that you're just kind of not sure about. Don't go back to the person and say, what did you mean by that? Just sit with it. Because this is where our blind spots can suddenly become clear. It's like, okay, well, is this true? Am I habitual? And it is true. It just doesn't sound really great, but it's very true, especially in the context in which I knew this person. It made absolute sense. But I actually love establishing habits. I eat a lot of the same foods. I exercise at the same time every day. These are things that make sure things get done. And for me, having habits creates space for creativity when I don't have to have a habit that I'm managing, right? So sometimes just look at the words and just kind of sit with it, take it in, and just ask yourself, is this true? Is there something I'm supposed to be learning here from this feedback? So I challenge y'all to try that. Okay. So let's wrap up around self-awareness. Something I want you to consider. Does your current level of self-awareness impact how you show up, which is your brand, as a leader? So that's something to reflect on. So let's move on to the second EQ skill, self-management. This is where the rubber meets the road, okay? The ability to effectively manage your emotions and behaviors in healthy ways and adapt to changing circumstances. This is about being able to stay flexible. Using that same analogy of driving on the 405 freeway, right? It just happened. Can I put it into perspective? Am I sure? Is my heart beating a little bit harder? Yeah. But can I just breathe into it and just say, no, I got, right now my priority is getting to my destination safely. Can I just manage my emotions as I do that? I got cut off. It happened. It's information. And just breathe into it. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about how we do this. This is a quote. I don't know if you're familiar with Viktor Frankl. He was a psychiatrist and neuroscientist during in the 40s. And he was actually in a concentration camp during World War II. And he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And this is, I think, the most famous quote from the book. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So just kind of breathe into that space. That space is a gift. Our job is to create it. So let's kind of talk about what is the anatomy of an event and a response. Okay, so this is kind of how it works. Okay. There's something happens. I get cut off on the freeway, right? So let's use that. Let's keep that theme going. I get cut off on the freeway. The stimulus is that event. And that is actually neutral. You can have 10 people get cut off on the freeway and 10 people are going to have different responses. The response is not consistent amongst whoever has the experience. So there's the event and there's your response to it. The goal is to create that space. For me, I imagine a bridge. I'm going to show you this. I have a little postcard. It was a gift card that somebody sent me. And I'm going to share this. It's a picture of a bridge. And I keep it in my office because I'm a very visual person. I keep it in my office to remind me that I have a bridge that creates my space. It's like walking a bridge. Okay. So what is or a gap? Think of it as gap or space. What does your gap look like? I have another friend, for her, she imagines herself swinging on a hammock. back and forth, and it's her way. She breathes deep into it. She's been triggered. How do I move in my brain from that fight, flight, or freeze or emotions into rational thinking? I have to create space for it to get there. So what does your gap or space look like? Again, this is where choice lives. All right. So you want to create choice. If you see people who are, I'm going to chase somebody down the freeway, or we've seen enough images on TV about people reacting on airplanes, you know, they're not creating that space to breathe into it and just choose to choose. So that's what this self-management is really all about. So your reflection to consider: how does your current ability to manage your emotions express your leadership brand? We've all been around people who are reacting, and that leaves an impression, you know, in the workplace, not good. They are reacting to some trigger, and that doesn't, you know, that sticks with us. All right. So how do you want to show up? Is this an area that you might need a little bit of support in? So again, how does that express your leadership brand? So let's move on to the third skill, which is social awareness. The ability to understand the emotions, needs, and concerns of others. It's the ability to pick up on emotional cues. And so what's really important, this is about paying attention. This is about noticing. This is about, we can hear the content. We're in a conversation with somebody. We can hear the words they're saying. Can we also pick up on what they're not saying? The emotion behind their words, the context, if you will. So it is about being present to the needs and emotions of others, and even checking in. So there are two key skills around social awareness. One is listening, and the other is observing. Can I stay focused on what is in front of me? And then check in. You know, I noticed when we were in that meeting, you know, you mentioned a key point, and I noticed that, you know, Linda at the end of the table kind of, you know, just really bypassed your thought. And then you were really quiet through the rest of the meeting. I just want to check in with you and see if you're okay. How can I support you? You know, so those are kind of some of the ways that we can demonstrate social awareness, is really paying attention to the needs of others. Or even in the meeting, wouldn't have been great. It's like, you know what, Linda, I think Sue had a really good point. I'd love for us to revisit that. As a leader, can you do that? Can you step in and support others in the moment? Okay. So what is one thing we can do one simple thing we can do to build our social awareness? Stop talking. Stop talking, and stop preparing your answer. If you're in a conversation with someone, just be present to what they're saying. The right response will be revealed. You don't have to prepare it. Just let it be revealed. Maybe what comes up with what somebody says is more around curiosity. Wow, that was a really good point. Can you tell me more about that? How to help people open up. Can you see how as a leader, this skill is key, especially when we're talking about inclusion and diversity of thought? Can we do that? Okay. So key, just stop talking. Listen. Just listen, pay attention, ask questions, show up curious. Really key. So again, I know I'm moving a little faster through this. I'm watching the time. How does your awareness of others' needs demonstrate your leadership brand? It's part of your leadership brand to be curious. Is that an important value of yours? Maybe. It's about demonstrating it now, showing up as in curiosity. Okay, and then finally, relationship management. The ability to use your self-awareness and your awareness of others' emotions and needs to maintain effective and rewarding personal and professional relationships. This is the sum of the other three skills. Okay, are you willing to be vulnerable with others? Okay. Are you willing to take the time to develop relationships through, hey, look, I know what is important to me. I know what's important to you. Let's connect. This is, relationship management is about negotiation skills. It's about making good decisions. It's about innovative thinking. It's about conflict resolution. This is it right here. It's the sum of all of it. Can you imagine if you have a leader who really focuses on that, the impact that that has on the team, on the goals, on the results that they're getting? Can you imagine that? So anyway, I also just noticed something here on a question in the comments. Did I miss the answer to my gap looks like? You want to know what? What does it look like to you? That's the answer. What does your gap look like? Is it a bridge like mine? Is it a hammock like my friends? Is it just a couple seconds of deep breathing? What does it look like for you? Because it needs to be something you'll do in those moments when you're triggered. Okay. Thank you for that question. Great question. So now consider, how does your ability to create and nurture strong, trusting relationships communicate your leadership brand? So let's kind of talk about a little bit more about what leadership brand is. This is like, how do people, when you leave the room, how do people describe you? What words do they use to describe you? Again, remember, you have a brand, whether you know it or not. So if you want to brand by design versus by default, what does that look like? What do you want it to look like? So that's a key question. 3 actions you can take now. Again, these are in your action guide, so feel free to write these, fill in the blanks. Connect to your emotions through presence and reflection. Create the space to notice. Now, another thing to remember is that our emotions show up physically. You know this. I want you to think of a time, the last time you had an emotional reaction to something. Where did you feel it? Did you feel it like in your stomach? Like it started to feel like tight? Your heart felt, maybe it was clenching in your heart space, or your throat, you felt, I can't get the words out, right? Where did you feel it? So this is data. Noticing where it's happening. It's like, ooh, I'm just noticing that my heart is beating really tight, or I'm noticing that my throat is drying. What is going on? So it's that curiosity, being present to it. And then taking the moments to reflect, like I shared in that initial exercise. Take some time at the end of the day to reflect. You didn't notice it in the moment. This is a way for you to do that. Okay. For some folks, it might be a headache comes on, or I'm feeling the tension above my eyes. You got to notice. All right. So that's the first thing. Connect to your emotions. Second, check in on your emotional triggers and notice any common threads or trends. This is great information if you can notice it. I will share this with you. One of my triggers, this is my willingness to be vulnerable. Okay. One of my triggers is when somebody tells me they're going to do something, they commit, and then they don't do it. They don't let me know that they're not going to do it. It just falls off the radar. And so there's a consequence here. The impact is wider than whether or not they did what they said they were going to do. It impacts other people. So so when I think about that trigger and I think about my values, one of my number one value is integrity. It's about showing up authentically in my truth, being honest, trust, all of that. That's number one for me. So if I say I'm going to do something, you can count on it. I'm going to do it. So when others don't do that, I notice. Now, I also have to breathe into it and just say, okay, what's the best use of this emotion right now? Maybe it's to get curious. So help me understand what happened. What's going on? And let them explain it. So, how can we check in when these triggers are happening? And are there any common threads that we can learn from about ourselves? This is about getting to know ourselves better. And then finally, get curious about yourself and others. This is the bottom line. Ask questions, reflect, Really get to know yourself. And also curiosity about others. I can tell this is really an important topic to you. Tell me more about how you're feeling about it. Provide space, create space for other people to share what is important to them. This is, again, we're all being more inclusive. This is how you do it. Okay. So let's go back to the self-leadership model. And I'm really watching the time here. What I want to do is quickly go through this. There's a space in your action guide for you to rate yourself from 1 to 10. Okay, on how you think you're doing. So let's talk about self-awareness first. Again, about presence and reflection. This is what we've been spending today on. This is about, what am I noticing about myself as I experience an emotion? Where are you on that? From 1 to 10. How do you think you're doing around self-awareness? Self-knowledge. This is about curiosity and clarity. Okay, this is where questions like, what is important to me? And what do I contribute are asked and answered. How do you think you are around? Do you have curiosity about yourself, clarity about what's important to you, values, strengths, all of that? Rate yourself there. Self-acceptance. It's about self-appreciation and compassion. Okay. Can you acknowledge who you are and appreciate all your strengths and shortcomings? Because we all have them. Can you have appreciation for the strengths and compassion for the shortcomings, accepting all of it and how it has served you up to this point? Where are you on that? 1 to 10. Okay. Self-regard. This is about self-confidence and worthiness. Okay. This is about learning to overcome your fears and having a favorable opinion of yourself, regardless of what the world thinks of you, and being confident in who you are. Where are you? 1 to 10 on self-regard. Self-care. This is about setting boundaries and self-advocacy. Can I ask for what I want or need, including what I'll tolerate or not tolerate? What's okay? What isn't okay? Are you clear on it? Self-advocacy. Can I ask for what I need? I need support. I need help. I need clarity. I need, whatever it is you need, can you ask for it? 1 to 10. And then finally, selfless. This is about vulnerability and being of service. How can I support the women leaders coming up behind me through opportunities like mentorship or sponsorship? Am I willing to share my story? Am I willing to say, this is where I screwed up big time? And I want you to learn from my mess. That's a way of being of service as a leader. So when we develop our self-leadership skills, our presence, our compassion, our growth mindset, our resilience, our joy, our patience all increase. If we don't develop our self-leadership, our perfectionism, our judgment of ourselves and others, a fixed mindset, our expectations, our self-doubt, our indecisiveness, actually they decrease when we develop them. I don't want to be perfectionist anymore. That was my story early. I don't want that. I'm willing to say, is 80% of it good enough? Great. Sign me up. So when you develop your self-leadership, here's what increases, here's what decreases. So, hey, Camille, this is all great. What's next? What do I do now? What I'd love you to do is in your action guide, based on what you've learned today, and I've thrown a lot of information at you, what is one bite-sized action you're willing to take? What is one small thing you're willing to do? Are you willing to kind of examine that space, that gap, and say, I need to create an image in my head of what that looks like. So the next time I'm triggered, I have that image. If you want to borrow my bridge, you're welcome to it. But what would work for you? And then make sure you have something that represents it around you, that reminds you. Again, I'm visual, so that's my advice. I have that picture of the bridge right here in my office. It always reminds me, take the space. So what is the one thing you're willing to do? And if you're willing to share it in the chat, please do so. So I don't know if you've ever heard this phrase, a rising tide lifts all boats. And what this means is when I focus on developing one thing in my life, one area that I want to really work on, the impact multiplies. So if you want to improve how you show up as a leader at work, guess what? The good news is that the work you do impacts how you show up as a partner, how you show up as a friend, how you show up as a parent, how you show up as an adult child of parents. The multiplying effect is remarkable. So I really, to me, that's one of the things I want to leave you with, is knowing that this is all worth it. Okay. The work that you do is all worth it. It's not just about work. This is where it may be showing up. And absolutely that happens when I'm coaching women leaders. They say, wow, I noticed that I show up differently with my kids now, or with my spouse or my partner. I show up different. And so they can see the impact is far reaching. And so I really just wanted to make sure that that point was made. And I also want to invite you to stay connected with me. Here's, if you want to take a screenshot of this, I think it's also, the information is also in the action guide. If you want to opt in, we did a real quick 1 to 10. How am I doing around self-leadership? I actually have a real assessment that is free. All you got to do is go to my website, opt in for the assessment. You'll get some emails from me that'll kind of follow up and give you a little more context around the assessment. And I'd also love to invite you, if you want to talk about coaching or learn more about the work I do and how it might support you in how you want to develop, please, I offer you a complimentary 45-minute Let's Connect call. There's an opportunity there for you to get on my calendar. I have a few open spaces. And I'd love to have a conversation with you. If you're really interested in, the potential of working with me, I would love to have that conversation with you. And so this is perfect for anybody who is ready to make a change. They're noticing themselves in some of the stuff I've covered today. You want to focus on you, because when coaching is all about you, okay? And you're ready to invest in yourself, I would love to have a conversation with you. So we have a few minutes. Are there any, that's supposed to be me too, by the way. Are there any questions? Anything that has shown up? I'm going to scroll through the comments here. Oh, you guys are leaving such lovely comments. Thank you. Thank you. This is great. I will also invite you, if you don't have any questions now, so I'm getting really good at Slack. So feel free to DM me on Slack if you have any questions based on what I've covered today. I would love to have a conversation with you. So please do. I want to thank you all for your time. This has been a lot of fun. I hope you noticed my enthusiasm for the topic. This is my purpose. This is what I do. And I really have enjoyed spending this time with you. I want to leave you with a final quote that I think applies here. At the center of your being, you have the answer. You know who you are and you know what you want. So I just want to, again, thank you all. I'm going to keep on. I have a couple minutes. I'm actually kind of amazed at how well we did here with time. This is so cool. When you identify your own values like integrity, how do you communicate those values and expectations to folks you work with? And oh my God, what a great question. I would actually recommend that you potentially facilitate a team values exercise. How cool would that be? Where you all kind of, and I actually do have a values exercise too. If you want to, we can talk a little bit more about that. I usually offer that to my clients, but it's a way to kind of identify what your top 5 values are. And then you can, as a team, okay, well, what's important to us? What is our brand as a team? What should our customers, our internal customers, what can they count on with us? How do we want to show up? So, Meg, that was a great question. And I would highly encourage you to do that, because this is an opportunity for you to share what your personal values are and just say, and even invite your team to say, look, if integrity is a strong value of yours, invite them to say, I don't feel like, if they want to be able to, forgive me, but kind of call you out. It's like, if something doesn't feel authentic to them, is there an opportunity for them to speak their truth? What's important? It's like, because once we announce it, we kind of have to live it. So just so you know that, you have to be okay with that. Anyway, I'm looking at the time. I know we want some break in between because there's another topic coming on at 11 o'clock. But I want to thank you all again. I'm going to look in the camera now as opposed to my comments. Thank you all again for your time. I have enjoyed spending this time with you, and I'm hoping that some of you will take me up on my offer for a call. So anyway, I enjoyed it, and thank you again. Bye.